Could the Buffalo Bills look to the NFL draft for an upgraded offensive tackle? We're exploring the situation and the options today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and please be sure to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Well, folks, it's time to talk about the Buffalo Bills offensive tackle situation and the NFL draft. Yesterday on the podcast, we dedicated our entire conversation to right tackle Spencer Brown. And so with what we uncovered there about his background, what the film told us, and just kind of the future outlook, I thought it was appropriate now to consider some of the options in the NFL draft that I think would make sense if the Bills were actually looking to replace Spencer Brown. So we're going to have 3 segments today. The first one, we're going to talk about the Bills' current situation at offensive tackle. Then we're going to talk about first-round options, guys that I think would make sense for the Bills in the first round. We're going to talk about day 2 options in the third segment, and then just some of the mid-round guys that I think are at least interesting and worth mentioning. So let's start by setting the stage here by reflecting on the current overall situation for the Buffalo Bills at offensive tackle. Now, they have a locked-in starting left tackle in Dion Dawkins. He's 28 years old. He's been a 6-year starter already to this point. He's been very consistent. I'm very satisfied with Dion Dawkins at left tackle. I think most people are happy with Dion Dawkins. It feels like he's got a lot of fans out there, and people understand the value that he brings as the Bills' blindside protector for Josh Allen. I know he has some critics out there too. I'm aware of you. I see your comments. But I think it's widely understood that Dion Dawkins is at a minimum an above average starting left tackle in the NFL, if not one of the better 10 or 12. So you have that locked in. At right tackle, you have Spencer Brown. And I am not going to rehash the conversation we had yesterday because I talked about Spencer Brown for the entire episode. But he's entering his 3rd season and has been inconsistent. There's a lot to like, but there's been inconsistency. And the point that I keep coming back to is the most upgradable starting position for the Buffalo Bills offense is Spencer Brown at right tackle. Now, there's a great possibility that Spencer Brown realizes all of his potential next year and becomes a high-quality impact starting right tackle for the Buffalo Bills. I think that's well within the realm of possibilities. There's also the potential for him to be more of the same, which is inconsistent and an empty promise on physical traits. And certainly the injury stuff is concerning, whether it's been 2 knee surgeries and a back surgery since 2015. And so, as I mentioned yesterday, I can be convinced that staying the course with Spencer Brown at right tackle is the right thing to do. I can be convinced that exploring other options through the draft to find an upgrade is a smart thing to do. And we're talking about a very important position, offensive tackle. The Bills have one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the NFL, and Josh Allen. They're paying him a ton of money. Protecting him should always be critical for Brandon Beane. And you look at Spencer Brown, and you feel like he is upgradable. Now, he could take a massive step, like we talked about. It's certainly possible, but he's upgradable. So after Dion Dawkins, your starting left tackle, and your current starting right tackle being Spencer Brown, you have 2 backups. one of them being David Quessenberry, who filled the role of swing tackle, really a four-hole backup for the Bills last year. I think David Quessenberry is a reasonable swing tackle, but I will say this, he had his own injuries last year, and I hate that for Quessenberry when he had to play. He's coming in relief of a starter where you don't want to see a drop off, right? But he's also coming in and having to play through his own injury. So that was kind of a disappointing situation to see unfold. But the Bills saw enough there and brought him back, and he's in the mix to be the Bills' swing tackle again. And then, of course, Tommy Doyle. We can't forget about Tommy Doyle. Got injured against the Dolphins last year, the Week 3 game, tore his ACL. And Tommy Doyle is another really talented player in terms of size and athleticism. In his rookie year, he filled that Bobby Hart jumbo tight end role and did a pretty nice job. He got a touchdown pass from Josh Allen in the playoffs against the Patriots. I'm not sure that he'll be a starter, but maybe there's a chance that he could actually be a better backup swing tackle than a David Quessenberry. And so he's a player to be mindful of. Really not concerned about the timetable here. He got injured in Week 3. 9 to 12 month recovery should put him well on track to be ready to go for the 2023 season. So you have good competition there between Doyle and Quessenberry. I think there's a good chance they both make the roster. But I think that's a good mix of backup tackles. Now, one thing that's important to be mindful of when you're talking team building and position specific and you're considering what the Bills have against the draft, you got to talk about contracts and what players are expired and when. And so right now, as things currently stand, David Quessenberry is on a 1-year deal, an expiring contract after this season. But the other three, Dawkins, Brown, and Doyle, they're all signed through the 2024 season, so this year and next. And so it's not super pressing in terms of that component, just the contractual component of looking at the position group, but it can get concerning very quickly. And so is Dion Dawkins going to get another contract from the Bills? Maybe. He's got a couple of void years already on the back end of his deal. He signed through his age 29 season. So do you look at him as a player that can be a quality left tackle into his 30s? If so, then he's an extension candidate probably next off season. But I don't think you've seen enough from any other player here to warrant that. And of course, that includes Spencer Brown. And so Spencer Brown is kind of the player that we look at as the floor here. Spencer Brown, what he's shown you, that's the floor at right tackle. You're hopeful for some growth there, but as we shift our conversation to the draft options, I need to be able to ask myself this question. Can this player upgrade from Spencer Brown? And those are the players that I would be interested in. There's a lot of prospects. I'm not really interested in the Bills bringing in a 4th-round toolsy offensive tackle prospect to compete with Spencer Brown. That doesn't move the needle for me. I'm talking about guys that can legitimately come in and be a better option than Spencer Brown from day one, and then, of course, throughout their growth as a player, solidify themselves as a pillar and real asset to the offensive line for the long term here as you consider this offensive line, not just for 2023, but beyond. So in just a moment, we're going to start talking about those players, but first need to tell you about FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's talk about these options in the draft. And so today on this podcast, the rest of the way here, I'm going to work through my personal offensive tackle rankings for the Buffalo Bills. So this isn't vacuum scouting. This isn't my 2023 NFL Draft offensive tackle rankings. This is my offensive tackle rankings for the Buffalo Bills. And that's something that I'm very excited about as I've transitioned away from the Draft Network and leaning in all of my time to Locked On Bills and Locked On NFL Scouting. That's where I'm putting all of my time. It allows me to evaluate draft prospects solely through that lens of the Buffalo Bills. And so that is how I'm viewing them. And I'm really enjoying this because that's always been a challenging part of evaluating the draft and being mindful of all 32 teams as opposed to just one. And it really shifts the conversation because you're thinking about the traits that really fit with the schemes and style of players that particular team likes. And so we can really laser in our conversations here in a really healthy way. I'm excited about it. So let's do it. Now, I'm going to go through all of my offensive tackle rankings. And what I mean by that is not like the bottom of it, but at the top, right? There's a couple of players here that we're going to start off with that I really don't see getting to pick 27. But I want to at least mention them here. And my offensive tackle 1 for the Buffalo Bills is Broderick Jones out of Georgia. 6'5", 311, 34 3/4 inch arms, 34 3/4 inch arms, an RAS score of 9.56. So great size, great athleticism. I think Broderick Jones is a special player. He's one of my favorite prospects in this class. And he's a guy that I really loved coming into the 2022 season. And he only started like 4 games in 2021, but this dude was dominant. And I was really excited to see him get a full opportunity this year with Georgia to start. And my goodness, he did not disappoint. He was awesome. And I know that he's only a 1-year starter, but you're talking about a 1-year starter for Georgia. And of course, they won the national championship. So he went through the entire regular season and the college football playoffs in addition to the SEC championship game and proved himself week in and week out. There was never any lulls. He was consistently dominant week in and week out. And he did it against top competition. This is the SEC, the closest thing to the NFL. And my guy was dominant. So much to love. He's a tremendous athlete. Love the way that he moves. He's really physical. He gets after people. I mean, this guy in space is awesome. I mean, that's one of my favorite things to watch is just how fun it is to see Broderick Jones trail the play, go on some longer pulls, get out into the boundary, and connect with these moving targets, and he just gets it done. He's a really good football player, and someone, probably not the Bills, is going to get a real cornerstone, I think, not only for their offensive line, but for their entire team. I think he's got that type of upside. So I don't think he's going to be in play for the Bills. You look at teams earlier in the draft like the Raiders, like the Bears, the Jets, the Titans. They got to be licking their chops for this guy. I don't think he touches pick 27, but needless to say, he's my OT1 for this draft. My OT2, and still a player that I think would be highly unlikely that he touches pick 27, is Paris Johnson, the offensive tackle from Ohio State. 6'6", 313 pounds, 36 and an 1/8 inch arms. That's right, 36 and an 1/8 inch arms. Just a tremendous blend of size and athleticism, unbelievable length. We actually don't have an RAS score for him, but if you watch him play, there's zero questions about his functional athleticism. And in fact, he looks like one of the better athletes amongst all the offensive linemen in the class. So I have really no doubt that his RAS score would be really, really good. Paris Johnson, I think, is a plug-and-play starter at tackle in the NFL. Loved his year-over-year growth. In 2021, for Ohio State, he played right guard, which is egregious. I mean, just a complete failure, I think, by Ohio State to put a really talented player like Paris Johnson in his best position. He needed to be their left tackle. And I know that they had other good players there, but make those guys play guard and not Paris Johnson. The Ohio State has this really strange philosophy about seniority and positions. Like, no, put your best players on the field at the spot where they can be the most successful. And Paris Johnson should have never spent a year at right guard. Okay, but he went to left tackle this past year and was everything I hoped he would be. Where you watch him at guard and you're like, man, this guy is a long, athletic dude with great foot speed and lateral quickness. What is he doing at guard? You're taking away his opportunity to showcase his best traits. And he went over to left tackle this past year and really was phenomenal. Really checks all the boxes. And one thing that I didn't know what I was going to get from him was, all right, what type of power do I have here? And what type of temperament do I have? And my goodness, him being in that more natural spot at left tackle really revealed so many of those things. I love his very natural feel for angles. He's a stud. Okay. And so if he gets to 27, turn in the card. All right. But I don't think he gets to 27. I think he's certainly a top 15 type player. Now, the good news is the rest of the players we're going to talk about, I think, are within the realm of possibility for the Buffalo Bills to draft if they so choose to pick an offensive tackle. The next guy, my offensive tackle 3, and maybe this will be a surprise for some people, but I really like this player. His name is Matthew Bergeron out of Syracuse. 6'0", 318 pounds, 33 3/4 inch arms, RAS score of 873. Really like this player. Another guy that showed really good year-over-year growth. I think about the player I studied in the summer of this past summer, kind of leading into the 2022 season, and I was pretty lukewarm on him, thought he might had to play guard, and then he played this past season and really put it all together. Was, I think, clearly the best offensive lineman at the Senior Bowl, and, Darnell Wright was at the Senior Bowl. Dawand Jones was at the Senior Bowl. Cody Mauch was at the Senior Bowl. John Michael Schmitz was at the Senior Bowl. There's a lot of good players there. And I thought Matthew Bergeron just absolutely shined every single day. He's a guy that just has great body control. That's one of my favorite things about him. And I think when you look at him through the lens of the Aaron Kromer preferences, I mean, he really falls in line with his ability to sit on his hips and play with good hip elevation and hand leverage and staying grounded and coordinated and controlled. I mean, he does all that stuff at a high level, and he's got good strength. I think he's got good natural feel for staying square to blocks. Came in with pretty decent length, almost 34-inch arms, good size. There's just so much to love about him, and just his ability to play within himself and not get out of control ever is something that I love. And even within that, he recovers well, right? As an offensive lineman, sometimes you're going to get beat. You're going to lose off the snap. A guy's going to win with hand placement or really have a dynamic first step. And there's just times where you have to recover. And Bergeron shows that ability to recover while staying under control. It's just a really nice blend of skill. I think the Bills will love him. And we know that Aaron Kromer was at his pro day as well. So he's a player that I don't know if he's commonly considered a first-round player. To me, he is and deserves to be a first-round pick. And if you're the Bills and you want to get a tackle, he makes so much sense. I don't know that he gets past Kansas City at 31. I think he'd be a dream pick for them. Cincinnati's picking later in the 20s, and they need a tackle as well with what's happening with Jonah Williams, and they signed Orlando Brown, and Lyle Collins is injured, probably going to get cut. They're looking for a starting tackle. I think that between some of those teams later in the first round, it just he's too solid of a prospect for me to not consider as a first round type player. So I'd be satisfied with him in the first round if the Bills went offensive tackle. The last first round offensive tackle that I have written down is Darnell Wright from Tennessee. 6'5", 333 pounds, 33 3/4-inch arms, 9-inch hands. So he's got like small hands, which is kind of weird. And I have small hands too. I actually have like 8 1/4-inch hands. So I hear you, Darnell, man. It's we're part of the small hands club here. But he's got a great RAS score, 967. Darnell Wright's a really fun football player to watch. I think he might have the best hands in the class of just his ability to not only stun players, right, with his punch. He's got a heavy punch and can really do some damage with him, but it's how he's able to latch and maintain, right? He's got great grip strength, and he's a player that works his hand fits very consistently throughout every rep. And so I love his usage of his hands. He's extremely powerful. I mean, he's going to make your offensive line and your offense in general just more physical. He gets after people, can really move bodies and create displacement in the run game. And nobody's getting through him in pass protection in terms of trying to challenge his anchor and really threaten with speed to power or a bull rush. I mean, this guy is an absolute stone wall in those situations. And I think he did a really good job at Tennessee of quick setting a lot and using that firm anchor and using those heavy hands to just get on top of guys quickly and keep them at bay and really control that width of the pocket. Now, I'll say this about Darnell Wright. There's some concerns that I have projecting him to the next level. I don't think he's got great lateral movement skills. I don't think he's got the most nimble feet. There's some heaviness there. Got a little bit of a tendency to fold at the waist and get top heavy as a blocker, get his head out too far in front of his toes and lose a little bit of control where, there's a few reps every game that you're going to watch where the head just drops, he folds at the waist and gets out of control and whiffs, right? So that happens from time to time. So that whole stuff, all that stuff I just talked about with Matthew Bergeron and playing within yourself and coordination, Darnell Wright's not quite there, but certainly he brings a power component to the table that's really, really intriguing. He's played some of the left side for Tennessee. Did not like his tape at left tackle at all. I think he's a true right tackle only. We saw that this past year for Tennessee, and so I worry about some of the versatility, right? Is he a right tackle only, or maybe is he a guard? I think those are questions worth asking as it relates to Darnell Wright. But if the Bills were to consider him, I'd love the power. I'd love the idea of what he can develop into in pass protection. Again, that Tennessee offense, not a whole lot of vertical sets, right? And so there's going to be some adjustment there for Darnell Wright. But what he can bring in terms of physicality, run game, and then just with some development and pass protection so that he can win at the next level of consistency, I think there's plenty to like. So if the Bills went offensive tackle in the first round, I would hope that the name was either Broderick Jones, Paris Johnson, Matthew Bergeron, or Darnell Wright. Well, folks, that's not all the offensive tackles that I like. Those are just the ones that I would pick in the first round. We got plenty of day 2 middle round guys here to talk about right after a quick break. One note that I want to make here is there's some players that maybe you're going to be surprised that I don't mention, and I want to set the record straight right now that I view them as guards. So Peter Skoronski out of Northwestern, I love him. He's a great player. I think he's going to be an awesome guard in the NFL. I don't view him as a tackle, so we're not talking about him as a tackle today. Same thing with Cody Mauch out of North Dakota State. Braden Daniels from Utah. I think those are 3 players that sometimes you see in offensive tackle rankings that for me, I evaluate as a guard or an interior offensive lineman, and so they won't be part of our conversation today. Now, there's 2 day 2 options, these are second round options for me that I really like. So I want to mention them and then just give you a list of some of the middle round guys that are appealing to me. But the next player that I want to mention, so this will be my offensive tackle 5, is Dawand Jones from Ohio State. This dude is huge. 6'8", 374, 36 3/8 inch arms, and 11 5/8 inch hands. I mean, that is just insanely large. We don't have an RAS score from him. I do think that he moves well for 6'8", 375. But he's still 6'8", 375. And we talked about him at some point here in the last couple of weeks where he's intriguing, but he's almost too big, right? Like we do a really good job as evaluators of identifying players that are too small, right? Just it doesn't have the size. But sometimes they can have too much size. And the point that I make with Dawand Jones is my dude can be 4 inches shorter. He could be 50 pounds lighter. He could have 2-inch shorter arms, and he'd still be a big offensive tackle with plenty of length. I mean, there's some excess here. So sometimes are there a lot of 6'8", 375-pound offensive linemen out there making it happen in the NFL? And so look at the outliers from both sides of things where, hey, we know guys are too small. If I was talking about an offensive tackle right now that was 5'11", 285 pounds with 32-inch arms, you'd be laughing me out of the building and say, Joe, why are you talking about this guy? Well, sometimes we got to be mindful of the other end of the spectrum as well. So Dawand Jones, there's still a lot to like. I mean, some people like that size. I'm a little concerned about it. And not that he has all this sloppy weight. I think he carries 375 really well. But he's huge. He's powerful. So you expect a big tackle to have power. You get it, right? He can push people around in the run game, firm anchor in pass protection. I think he does a very good job of maximizing his length, getting hands-on, and trying to control opponents, because I think he's understanding that the best thing that he can do is be a lot to get around, right? He's not going to be able to stay square with speedy rushers with the consistency that you're looking for. But if he can elongate the path, right? And part of that is by using his mass, using his length to make those paths long. He understands that, and the way that he pass sets really plays into that. But is this going to be a player that's going to vertical set a ton? Do you want this type of athlete in front of Josh Allen, who likes to roll to his right and extend plays? You know, is he going to be able to be that type of asset that you're looking for? I have some questions there. And so that's why I didn't love him as first round, this makes a lot of sense. More of a second round guy. I see the appeal, have some question marks though. The other second round guy that I want to mention here, and I'm a bit lukewarm on him, it's Anton Harrison from Oklahoma. 6'4", 315, 34 and an eighth inch arms. His RAS score comes in at 7.67. Harrison's an intriguing player. I thought athletically, his functional athleticism was better than what his RAS score is giving us. I thought some of his best qualities were his ability to redirect his weight, lateral quickness, foot speed, good length. You know, you kind of thought of him as he's got length and quick feet. We like that from offensive tackles. He's on the radar. That's kind of my journey with Anton Harrison, where I just functional strength's not there right now. I think he's a guy that's going to have to spend some time in the weight room to really maximize his ability to become a starter in the NFL. But I think the athleticism there, if you want to run a lot of zone, I think he'll be very appealing. You can take advantage of some angles there and be able to create that lateral movement. Certainly the athleticism to stay square in pass protection, but I think for him, the name of the game is just get stronger. And so I'm not sure if he would be able to immediately challenge Spencer Brown to be the Bills starting right tackle. And I'm pretty sure all of his game experiences come at left tackle. So I'm a little bit lukewarm on Anton Harrison, but I would understand him on day 2. Some other guys I want to mention here, and I'm not going to go like in depth on them. These are more, I would say, 3rd to 5th round options, where if the Bills wanted to add developmental players, guys that I think could eventually be a starter, that could challenge a Tommy Doyle, that can challenge a David Quessenberry, that can give you a guy on a rookie deal for 4 years to kind of see what you have. Let me just give you some names here that are intriguing to me, but they don't necessarily pass the test of, I think that they can be an upgrade to Spencer Brown. Carter Warren out of Pittsburgh, big fan of him. Tyler Steen from Alabama. Wanye Morris from Oklahoma. Warren McClendon from Georgia. And Asim Richards from North Carolina. Those are some guys kind of in the middle round range that are intriguing to me. And if the Bills don't pick an offensive tackle in the first 3 rounds, you know, I think they do need to add one at some point. And so those are some of the names later on that move the needle for me and cause me to perk up and give me some level of intrigue. So there you have it. We've talked all about Spencer Brown yesterday. We talked about the draft options today. And so you should have a pretty good feel of the way that I'm looking at this position and who I like. Again, first round options: Broderick Jones, Georgia; Paris Johnson, Ohio State; Matthew Bergeron, Syracuse; Darnell Wright, Tennessee. And then you go down to Dawand Jones, Ohio State; Anton Harrison, Oklahoma, as my second round guys. And then my middle rounders, 3, 4, 5, Carter Warren, Pittsburgh; Tyler Steen, Alabama; Wanye Morris, Oklahoma; Asim Richards, North Carolina; Warren McClendon from Georgia. All right, folks, there you have it. We did it. We talked offensive tackles in the NFL draft. So we've done linebacker, we've done offensive tackle. I'm certainly planning on more position groups, interior defensive line, wide receiver, edge, tight end as well. Those are definitely positions that I want to have conversations just like this. And I'll have some more information to share very soon about how you can see my Bills specific draft board and how I'm grading these prospects. So stay tuned on that as well. I have some cool stuff coming your way very soon. I'm not committing to a topic to you right now for tomorrow, but I am committing to a podcast. We'll be back for you tomorrow talking Buffalo Bills football. So make sure you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. If you're enjoying it, tell someone about it. Share it on your social media. That is always so helpful for me. Enjoy the rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.